Well, to help us delve into the former president's multiple charges and his appearance today, we're joined via Skype by Hennie Van Vuuren from Open Secrets. Thank you so much for joining us, Hennie. If you can do a very short tour in history of 16 years of fighting fraud and corruption charges that were made against Jacob Zuma, which really started from when he was an MEC in KwaZulu-Natal.
Hi, Annika. Good morning. Good morning to the viewers. I think absolutely it has been a tour of sorts for the country as well, and the manner in which we've seen this unfold has had many twists and turns. But the root of this all is in that infamous 1999 arms deal, concluded when Thabo Mbeki was president, negotiated at a time when Jacob Zuma was not yet deputy president of the country, but as you say, he was the MEC. He was an MEC in KwaZulu-Natal, however, an influential politician within the ANC, and the arms deal, what we now know, cost the country over 140 billion rand. We're still paying it off until last year. But the arms deal consisted of many packages, all of them blighted by corruption involving big German, French, Swedish, Italian, and British arms companies who all profited from the arms deal and are linked to payments of bribes or certainly of corruption in one way or the other. Thales, of course, was linked to a relatively minor part of the deal, but it was mired in corruption from the beginning, and the man they were doing business with was at the time Shabir Sheikh, who was the chief financial advisor to Jacob Zuma, the politician at that stage in KwaZulu-Natal, who hadn't yet entered the national stage. And what really happened, and I think that the nub of this is a series of negotiations that took place between Thales at the time, its South African subsidiaries, Tint, and of course Shabir Sheikh was in the room, and Jacob Zuma, in which it was agreed that Jacob Zuma would be paid 500,000 rand a year over a number of years. And I remember this is almost 20 years ago, Annika, to ensure that there would be a cover-up. It wasn't so that the deal would be secured, the arms deal packages had been signed, but to ensure that the matter would never be investigated. And this was the practice that arms companies and other big corporations linked to corruption often undertake, is to say, identify key players in the state who have leverage, who have influence, and can stop the process of accountability and act in our corporate interests. And so the allegation is that Jacob Zuma was effectively a pawn for a European arms company. He allowed himself to be bought, and in return, he allowed justice to be subverted in South Africa by ensuring that the cover-up took place. And I think arguably, Annika, maybe the last point to make is in that he was successful. We shouldn't forget that this is, in fact, the first prosecution we've had for crimes in the arms deal in almost 16 years, and that was the last big prosecution was Shabir Sheikh, and that is because Thales and Jacob Zuma have been effective in ensuring that the NPA has been deeply undermined through a scorched earth policy. The Scorpions, the anti-corruption unit within the NPA, was destroyed and dismantled as Jacob Zuma and his supporters had wanted that to happen more than 10 years ago. And then during the 2010s, we saw the dismantling of the country's criminal justice agency and, of course, opening the door to the looting of the state capture period. So there we see both the history of where this has come from, but the very deep impact this has not only had on the life of Jacob Zuma, but had on the life of millions of South Africans who have suffered the consequences of the looting of state capture over the last decade.
Hennie, it's often been said that the arms deal was really the genesis of the rot, the Pandora's box, if you like. And I often wonder to myself if Jacob Zuma doesn't feel somewhat annoyed about the fact that really 500,000 rand was very little in the bigger scheme of things, of how many other people possibly could have benefited with similar alleged bribes from the arms deal. I mean, they happen all over the world.
Absolutely. Well, I think when we look back at that period, Annika, there were a range of politicians like a prominent defender of Jacob Zuma, now Tony Yengeni, who really sold off his position as chair of the Parliamentary Defence Committee for a discount on a vehicle, a Mercedes-Benz. And so at that stage, it was just pure greed of a very relatively low level, if you like, but with a massive impact. I think the consequence was certainly profound. And there are some people who wish to minimize the crime because of the scale of the bribe that these politicians like Jacob Zuma, Tony Yengeni, and others received. But I think the corporations like Thales, I think certainly corporations like British Aerospace and others who are linked to bribery and corruption in South Africa know that they got this deal on the cheap. They got, they got a huge contract at the time, which was important to them. And of course, we shouldn't forget, Annika, the governments in France, the United Kingdom, and others. Many of them have shares in those same companies, so it benefited the political elite, if you like, in those countries at the time, as it still does today. But they were prepared to really sell the country off cheap, I think is the best way to describe what happened. And of course, I think sometimes this is the argument made from Jacob Zuma and others. I would imagine possibly in their minds, we've spent that cash a long time ago on school fees and whatever else the money was spent on. But now is the time, in the way that the state is really coming back for the proper receipts. This is the moment of accountability that I think one has been waiting for.
Hennie, thank you so much. As you say so correctly, this is the moment of accountability. And that was Open Secrets Director Hennie Van Vuuren.